So, Berto, I have a bunch of questions from the listeners that you and I can answer. What do you say, Berto?
Let's do it.
This is the Psychology in Seattle podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist, and I'm also a professor.
My name is Humberto Castañeda, and I solve unsolvable puzzles.
Speaking of which, let's talk about our interest in true crime podcasts and TV shows. Dasha from Slovenia asked the question, I would like you to talk about where our interest in true crime comes from. What is behind romanticization of serial killers and mass shooters? It is interesting that it's mostly a female phenomenon. I wonder if it is therefore more prevalent in societies where women's aggression is discouraged. Berto, what do you think?
I wonder, the first part of the question talks about crime, true crime, which is a broader category, and it includes, definitely lots of murdering happening, but not very often, not even serial killers. It's like, someone that went a little crazy because of infidelity or things like that, famous events, all these things. The more specific, serial killers, mass murderers,
because you have a fascination with it, right?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. But I'm saying like the one that's more about serial killers, psychopaths, mobsters, this kind of thing. I wonder if that does skew. Maybe it does skew a little bit in that it's like usually literally bad boys, like the worst of the bad boys, Okay, so I have a couple ideas. I know we talked a little bit about this before, but there is something that needs to happen in order for the world to work when we are struggling for resources and we are little cave people and there's just no luxury. There's no modern luxury. And that is violence. Violence has to happen. You have to either defend your tribe, you have to just be the one in charge, and violence might be involved there. You have to hunt. Even if you don't hunt, even if you're just collecting berries, animals will attack you. Violence is involved in your daily survival. So violence had to be somewhat glorified for that to work. Because imagine if you're an organism that any signs of violence, you discourage it. And I don't know if you can survive in this reality. Now, you could poke a hole in this and say, really? What's violent about many vegetarian animals? I'd say actually there's a lot of violence that happens in vegetarian animals between themselves. Clearly they can't always resist the carnivores, but they try, okay.
So, well, and just to bolster your point a little bit, we evolved from similar or the same ancestor as bonobos and chimps.
Yeah.
And both bonobos and chimps have a structure society-wise that involves violent action when necessary to protect territory from other groups of bonobos and chimps.
Yeah.
And there could be an evolved pleasure, if you will, in the witnessing or enactment or even just hearing the stories of violence.
So that leads me to, that might explain the anti-heroes like The Sopranos or things like that, where you're watching a psychopath in a fiction get away with crazy things. But in a way, you're watching them succeed. Not necessarily at the end of the movie, but you're watching them be clever with their violence. Now, the thing about true crime drama, though, is usually you're watching, you might be watching unsolved mysteries, but often you're watching about something that the people did get caught. They might already be in jail. They might have been executed or whatever. So there's this additional aspect to it, which is they didn't get clever. I mean, maybe they didn't get caught for a while, but finally they did. And now we're learning about everything bad they did. And it also doesn't seem functional. These aren't wow, they sure rose to the top of their pyramid with those crimes. No, it's they killed people. A lot of times for no apparent reason, and it was grisly. So what is that? And I wonder if that's the vestige of that fascination, but kind of gone awry. We think, well, yeah, violence has its place, and now we don't see much of it in our daily lives. So let's look at this that looks violent, and this might be why we like violent movies and true crime drama.
Yeah,
it's that outlet.
Yeah, kind of exaggerated situations like porn, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, okay, so the first thing I'll say, Dasha, is that, yes, we clearly have a fascination with killers, mass shooters, true crime, and evil in general. Ted Bundy killed, 12 people, 15 people.
That we know of, right? He claimed there was a lot more.
Yeah, but in terms of death that has occurred in the world, this is like a drop and a drop and
Small
a drop.
potatoes.
Yeah, it compared to what governments have done or the genocide in Rwanda.
Right.
Why Ted Bundy? Like if we're just thinking like by pure numbers of death, there's probably several individuals in Rwanda who killed many more, exponentially more people.
There are soldiers that have killed a lot of people.
Yeah, who probably murdered all sorts of people. Yeah. And I'm not just talking about Rwanda. We're talking about Nazis or other kinds of atrocities.
And our own soldiers, when they go to wars, they kill people.
Yeah, why Ted Bundy? What is it about him? And it is an interesting question. All the serial killers, the mass shooters, the podcasts, which are, reportedly listened to a lot more by women. We're talking like 90% women listen to these true crime podcasts. Whoa. Something like that. Documentaries, Law and Order. You could argue that all of our fantasy, like Star Wars movies, are all about this fascination with characters like Darth Vader, this kind of thing. And especially more recently with like Cruella and Joker, these sympathetic points of view with these really terrible characters. I mean, Cruella was a terrible human being who murdered puppies and wanted to murder puppies. Joker was also a terrible human being.
Right.
Like he, correct me if I'm wrong, killed all sorts of people.
Oh yeah.
Killed
wantonly.
Killed that guy on that. Killed Robert De Niro's character. Anyway, so it is interesting that we're attracted to it and that we watch it so much. You could argue that half of our entertainment, regardless of gender, has to do with the observation of evil acts. And there have been many theories put forth that I will present right now, but keep in mind that we don't understand why we do anything. I mean, we understand why we crave food and sex and attachment, but we don't understand why we're so obsessed with, say, fashion. Like we could take a guess and we could maybe tie it to evolution, but our culture is so way beyond the African savannah at this point.
Lots of abstraction.
We just don't really understand why we do anything. And so keep that in mind. But some of the hypotheses that I enjoy are, one is we like to have adrenaline rushes. Mm-hmm. We like horror movies. We like to do peekaboo with a child. Yeah. It's all that kind of feeling of being scared but not actually being in danger. So hearing about a ghost story or a story of Ted Bundy or a serial killer, I think gets our heart moving because we feel the danger. We're imagining ourselves being there. And it is a bit of a adrenaline and maybe even endorphin rush from that experience. Number two is I think we're all trying to gain mastery over a situation. So it's normal for us, and we probably evolved to be this way, that when we see danger or hear about danger, we want to know about the danger so we can avoid the danger. For example, for me, I have on Reddit, I subscribe to this one subreddit called Idiots in Cars.
Okay.
And it is what it is. It's just a bunch of idiots in cars doing idiotic things. And I am fascinated with these videos that they post because why? And one hypothesis based on this hypothesis is that I'm driven to watch these idiots because it makes me feel safer on the road because I feel like I know the signs or the early signs of their idiocy, or at least I have the fantasy or the unconscious premise that if I pay attention, I'll somehow be safer. And I think that's another reason. And I think this is why women in particular like these true crime, because women are by far much more victimized by all sorts of violent crimes. And they understandably have an interest in knowing the typical abusers. And if you listen to all these podcasts, it's a lot of men doing terrible things. We also probably evolved to pay attention to danger to keep us safe. We also get to fantasize about having power over others. And I think this is why a lot of men, women listen to podcasts or they like true crime about being, men being terrible psychopaths, victimizing people, and women included. So from their perspective, they're trying to get to know the psychopath. They're trying to understand it so they can protect themselves. Whether it works or not is highly debatable, by the way. But for men, we're much more interested, culturally speaking, in power. And so we like to watch gangster movies because the very, well-worn trope of a gangster show is they don't take shit from anyone.
They have got the power.
And if anyone gets in their way, then they're going to be able to, beat the guy up.
So I will absolutely 100% agree with that when it comes to gangsters and many villains in movies. However, the serial killer one is a little funny because, at least for me, I remember when I first started reading about Ted Bundy, the reason I was so fascinated, as far as I can tell, it's obviously multifaceted, but one thing is my dad had talked to me about Ted Bundy. He had mentioned him. And I remember when, what's his name, when Dahmer happened, I remember my dad talking about serial killers. Okay. And since he was a psychiatrist, like he had talked to me and he had shown me in the DSM, and like I had, I kind been like, whoa, this is weird that this happens. Also, there was this dark part about myself that I also sort of saw in my dad that wasn't really, but it felt psychopathic, which was the apparent ability to, in certain cases, turn off your emotions. I had noticed it in my dad in the sense that as a doctor, he seemed totally unbothered with dissecting a cadaver. And with many things that were like many people, made people squeamish and stuff. And I was like, oh. And then I started realizing that there were cases where I could simply tell myself, I'm going to not care right now. And then all of a sudden, like a little flip would go in my head. And I'm like, oh, I'm okay to, like, I remember watching on the TV, there was some sort of surgery or something. And I was like, oh, but then I'm like, nope, you don't care. And then I was like, I was fine. And I watched it and it was fine. It was really weird. So I was kind of fascinated with that. And so when I was reading about Ted Bundy, I'm like, kind of almost this dark fascination with like, can I be a serial killer? Not that I wanted to be, but like,
yeah, this is good. This is another hypothesis that I have. And it ties into why a lot of people like Spock or Data or other kinds of characters, other kind of characters like this, who are proposed to have they don't have emotions, or they seemingly have control over their emotions, because emotions are good and bad, and there's a lot of bad that come from emotions.
Right.
A lot of pain, a lot of longing, a lot of sadness, a lot of fear. And wouldn't it be nice if we could turn off our emotions and to watch a psychopath? And this is why a lot of the depictions of psychopaths are extremely annoying to me, because they're never depictions of actual psychopaths.
Right. They're more psychotic than...
No. What do you mean?
Because like a lot of times you'll see like the Joker's an example. Like he's having delusions. Like he's having like he doesn't see reality. Well, it depends which Joker depiction. But many times, especially in the comics, he's really not there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, right. But for the Ted Bundys of the world and these kinds of people, or other villains, Joffrey Baratheon, this kind of thing, I think that, or more so Ramsay Snow, I suppose, this feeling of wanting to, and I think this doesn't go over well with people, which is the reason why you're so fascinated with Ramsay Bolton and Ramsay Snow, the reason why you're so fascinated with Ted Bundy, or the reason why you're so fascinated with Tony Soprano, possibly is because, one, you want to be like them because they don't have feelings, and wouldn't it be nice?
Yeah.
And two, they have tremendous power. Now, you don't necessarily want to kill, well, I could even go that far, but let's just say you don't want to kill people, but you definitely don't want to take other people's crap.
Right.
And these people are always powerful. And again, getting back to my anger about the way psychopaths are depicted, is that if you depict actual psychopaths, their lives are train wrecks.
Well, and that
absolute train wrecks. But that's not. But we can't. If we had a train wreck psychopath on the television screen, it wouldn't help us because we'd look at psychopaths are pathetic. You just look at them, you're like, my God, your life is pathetic.
But that's why I was saying that I couldn't quite relate to the power thing with psychopaths, because when I read these books, like you're saying, their life was such a mess that it's not glamorous in that sense.
Right.
But so the fascination had more to do with that weird, like, how are they able to do this?
They don't have emotions.
How can they do that?
Right. And I think also another hypothesis that's related, but what you said is that you felt your dad exhibited lack of feeling, and it hurt you, right?
Actually, I didn't realize that, but yes, but at the time I admired it.
Right. But unconsciously, or it was actually causing damage to you. And so I have a hypothesis that the more damage you have experienced from what seems to be callousness towards you, the more likely you are to be fascinated. Because I grew up in a pretty good family environment, and serial killers and all this stuff has never fascinated me.
Right.
The only reason why I know anything about it is because the listeners have asked me to talk about it.
Yeah.
You know, they do an episode on Jeffrey Dahmer, and I'm like, that's okay, I guess I'll look that up. And it's just not interesting to me. Now, who knows? It just could just be who
there's
I am.
also an aspect of it that is the actual part with the violence of it. There's very different to me, and I again, it's not for everyone probably, but the mob movie violence always feels slightly justified.
Oh yeah, they always
slightly justified.
Like they'll make the McDonald's worker an a-hole,
right?
And then,
well, you had that coming, buddy.
Right?
Shouldn't have mouthed off to Tony.
Right?
Now you know it's extreme, and you're like, well, no, but still, it's slightly. It's like it's like the whole Chris Rock skit about OJ, and he's going like, he's like, I'm not saying I agree with him killing it, but I understand it. Like anyway, so there is that part of it. Whereas the serial killer books, not the actual story, the history of it.
Wait, Chris Rock's skit was that
he has a thing about OJ.
That he understands why OJ killed.
Yeah.
How is that?
That's the joke.
What's the joke?
The joke is he's saying like, oh, so let's see. I bought you this Ferrari, and then your just friends, Ron, is driving it all around town, and now he's moving in with you and all these things. And he's saying, I'm not saying I approve, or I'm not saying he should have killed them.
I would have to hear that joke.
But I understand him.
I'd have to hear that joke, but the way you're describing it's not only not funny, but it's pretty awful because they were divorced.
I know it's what comedy.
But even if they weren't divorced, I get it. It's over the top,
but my point about it is that the thing with the Sopranos, all those things, it's like that kind of feeling. Like, I'm not saying I approve of it, but I understand it. It's justifiable in this movie moment.
Right.
When I was reading those books, none of it was, of course, justifiable. Everything was horrific.
Well, unless you are even slightly, which we all are, misogynistic.
Right.
What do you think I was going to say?
I thought you were going to go back to the have been abused, have felt abused by unemotional
Well, that shows
people.
you for assuming you know what I'm going to say.
Well, but I didn't. Yeah, because for me,
there's a lot of misogyny.
Yeah,
and
but I never felt that ever. And you know why? Because my dad is and was very misogynistic.
A part of misogyny, Berto, that you do have, which you could argue isn't necessarily misogynistic, it's sexist, which is an objectification of women.
Sure, but
and that's pretty.
Jeffrey Dahmer killed men.
True.
Like it to me that.
But I think this.
That was never a factor.
But I'm just saying that it's possible. I don't know about you, but I think it's possible that a fascination with Ted Bundy.
That could be, yes.
To hear these descriptions of, because all the women were like young, attractive ladies.
That could be.
And the sort of revenge fantasy that a lot of people might have, the incel in all of us.
I could imagine that. For me, I can honestly say, and I try to be as transparent as I can on this podcast, never once reading those stories, especially not the Jeffrey Dahmer ones, because did I ever feel anything but like complete revulsion about what was being described, right?
Yeah.
That said, like I said, there was that part of it, like, how is he capable? How are these people capable of doing these acts?
Yeah. It's
at all.
And I think that's why Ted Bundy is way more interesting to people than say Jeffrey Dahmer or others, is because he was so charming. And he was so smart.
Right.
He escaped from prison twice.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. So there was that as well. But I guess when you look at the movie's depiction of things, then it's a different ballgame. Hannibal Lecter is like the mafia thing. That one actually makes you go, oh, that guy's got power and he's a genius, and that's cool.
Yeah, and he can read people's minds. Yeah, another theory that I have is that we like to solve mysteries.
Yeah.
Because we like to feel smart. It's just like with Harry Potter, a major element of the plot is there's this mystery, and then when you find it out, it feels satisfying. Even though I hated all the Harry Potter mysteries, they were always completely... Every time I read those books, I was like, really paying it. Okay, this time I'm really going to pay attention to the clues. And then at the very end, Dumbledore would come in and explain the whole thing, and I'd be like, what? Rolling? Like, really? Like, basically, it was just one big Scooby-Doo episode where there's all these wacky things that happen, and then the author comes in and just explains the whole thing at the end. I was like, come on. But
the first one, which I love, but it is the most contrived thing in the world, because all the tasks at the end happen to be things that Harry and his friends could have completed from the previous experiences narrated.
Yeah.
Whereas, why would they make it like that to actually stop Voldemort?
I know. Yeah. And, it's a kid's book.
I know. And I love it.
So, the last theory I have, which is actually a strong one that I believe in, is Schadenfreude, which is for both the victim and the perpetrator. So and I feel this when I actually listen to true crime, is I feel both happy I'm not the victim, and happy I'm not the perpetrator.
Yeah, so I've told you before about recurring dreams that I've had in my life. It's been a while since I've had this, which is good because it's so stressful when it happens. In my dream, I will all of a sudden come to realize that, oh, right, I've killed someone before. And then in my dream, I'm thinking, wait a minute, did I hide the body well enough? And I start realizing, because at first I'm questioning myself. I'm like, wait. No, this might be a dream, right? And I'm like, no, this is real. Shit, that's right. I did kill that person. And oh no, what if they've discovered this and that? And I start getting so stressed that they're coming after me. They're going to find my dead body somewhere, right? So I think there is something to that sense of relief.
Yeah.
That it's like, that's not me.
Yeah. So you wake up in the morning, you're just like, oh my God.
Oh my God. Yeah. Oh, I've had the whole thing where you wake up and for a few minutes I'm still stressed, thinking, how am I gonna hide that? Oh, wait a minute. Oh, thank goodness.
Yeah, I have a similar dream about smoking. So I have dreams every once in a while about smoking. I used to smoke cigarettes and quit. It was extremely hard for me to quit years and years ago. But I will have dreams about smoking still, not very often. But in the dream, I'll be smoking a cigarette and I'll think, what am I doing? I don't smoke cigarettes. In my dream, I have that thought. But then I remember, wait, no, I have relapsed.
Oh no.
Often. But what I'm remembering are the other dreams.
Oh, right.
So I have this theory of dream is that when we're dreaming, we can't differentiate between memories of dreams and memories of reality.
Right.
And so similar to you, when you are having a dream about I killed someone, you're like, wait, but I didn't kill someone. But then you remember all the dreams, and you're convinced that that's real.
Yeah, that's happened to me with the flight dreams where I can fly, where in my dream I realize, so I know I've dreamt a lot of times about flying, but actually it turns out I can fly. Like I remember the dreams, but then I'm thinking, oh, but it turns out I can fly.
Right. And because you remember that you forgot or questioned it, but then you're like, but do I have memories of flying? I think that's the disconnect. It's like, but I have memories that I was flying.
Yeah.
So
crazy.
Yeah. And in my dreams, I'll be like, I must be dreaming because I'm smoking. And then I'm like, but wait, Kirk, you have so many memories of relapsing recently.
Right. Oh, I had one like that recently about the force powers. It was actually like a month ago or something. In my dream, I was coming out of a store and I realized that I forgot like something, like my cell phone or something. And I go, I gotta go walk in. And I go, oh, no, that's right. I have this thing I can do, which don't worry, it's not the force powers, but essentially I can just, if I think about it enough, things will come to my hand. And so I sit there and I do it and my phone comes to my hand. I'm like, that's right. I forgot I could do that. And then in the dream, I start thinking, that's a pretty cool thing I can do. I wonder if I should tell people I can do that. And I'm thinking, I know it's not the force, but it's still pretty cool that I can do that.
All right, Berto, these are not the droids you're looking for. And let's take a break. When we get back, let's continue answering questions. What do you say?
Let's do it.
All right, we're back from the break. We are trying to get people to become annual patrons. So if you can do that, go to your app on your phone or on the website, and where the tiers are, you can click on a button. You should be wherever, there's tier, there's deserving listener, and there's more deserving listener, and even more. In that zone on that page, there should be a little button that would allow you to switch to annual. When you switch to annual, you get a discount, and we get the benefit of being able to plan better because we know who is going to be a patron. If someone's going to be a patron for a year, we can kind of count on that.
Are the tears because they're staring at how much money they could be saving, and so they're like in tears?
Yeah, they're crying because they're like, I could be saving so much money if I was an annual patron. Also, let's do some OPPs. OPP for January 2018. These people became patrons all the way back then and have been patrons ever since. We have Azur, Inga Jansen. I'm positive I'm not pronouncing that right.
Jensen.
We have Louise from France.
Oh, Louis.
We have Michelle from Pennsylvania.
Nice.
We have Becca from Pasadena.
Becca? Do we know Becca?
I don't know.
Do we know Becca?
I don't know. We have Nari from Seattle, who I know. She is a student of mine. We have Serenity, who we met.
Serenity now.
Do you remember Serenity?
Yes.
We met. She's from California. We have Cheryl from Seattle. We have Marina from HR. What would HR be as a country? Any guesses? HR
Honduras.
Country. Really?
Hungary.
Country code. HR is Croatia.
How does that end up? Is an H a different?
Must be in their language. We have Duncan from Great Britain. We have Annie from Illinois. Julia from San Francisco. Alexander from Oslo.
What?
Wait, it says Oslo DK.
Oh.
Is the DK?
Oslo.
Is there an Oslo in Denmark?
Yeah.
Let me look it up. Oslo to Denmark. No, I don't understand. Anyway, we have Michelle from Durham, North Carolina. We have Desiree from San Francisco. We have Danielle from Grand Forks, North Dakota. We have Karen from Pasadena. Hey, we have two Pasadena. Becca and Karen, you can meet up. We have Jonathan from Montreal.
Nice.
So thank you all for becoming patrons and staying patrons this whole time.
By the way, I love the name Desiree.
Really?
It's like desire, but Desiree.
Patron Corey from Austin, he says, Hi, Kirk and Berto. I just finished the Inside episode that you guys talked about, the Bo Burnham, and was excited to hear your thoughts on the special. I wanted to ask or mention if you guys had seen Bo's 3 previous specials.
Did I tell you I got a lot of hate for my not giving it a 10 out of 10? Actually, most of the hate was because I called it a comedy special, even though the Netflix thing says comedy special. But because I called it a comedy special, I got a lot of hate.
Why?
It was like, a few comments of like, you know what? I can't believe he's calling it a comedy special. It's not a comedy. It's this, that, and the other thing. And so I was like, all right, fine. But it says comedy on the thing. He's a comedian. Sorry.
Yeah.
And I gave it, when I amended my first score, I ended up giving it an 8. 8 is pretty damn good.
Have you seen the previous specials?
His?
Yeah.
I've only seen YouTube videos of his comedy. I haven't seen are there other Netflix specials?
There's other specials.
Oh yeah, I might have seen, because I've watched him on YouTube a lot.
Yeah. I have not.
Not a lot, but
The
I've
very
seen
first thing I'd ever heard of him was 8th Grade, the movie. And then...
Which I didn't know. You told me that in the...
Yeah. And then I saw Inside, which was the next thing I saw. After that, I went back and watched a lot of his early YouTube stuff. And I'll say that when he's in his room just by himself, I like it. When some of his videos that he was doing when he was, I think, in his early 20s, not for me. I'm just going to say that. I mean, the lyrics are okay, but some of it's a tone of comedy that I find to be adolescent.
See, that is the parts that the reason it's an 8 and not a 10 is because of those little bits.
Yeah.
For example, the Instagram girl or whatever it's called, white girl Instagram, whatever that piece felt a little bit to me like that. And that's the kind of stuff that I enjoy less.
It didn't for me. There was, other than that one beat where I thought he was really drumming up the anger in that one scene as he couldn't get his takes right.
Yeah, which I was okay with.
There wasn't a single beat of that special that I found to be distasteful to me. But watching his old stuff,
I see.
There are a lot of things where I'm like, because
he was also a lot younger. You know?
Yeah, and Inside just feels so much more mature to me.
And this was, remember, he took a break. He matured a lot.
Well, he's older, He's and yeah. But I will say that regardless of how old he was, he is a master lyricist.
Yeah, he's a very good musician.
Well, I'd say musically he's okay.
I think to put together what he put for Inside
was good, but his early music I find to
it
be
wasn't as much.
A little on the simple side, which I think is on purpose. But from the very beginning, when he looks like he's 15 and he's doing these long raps that are extremely complicated in one take live while he's playing the piano, and he's like his really crappy Casio keyboard. He's in his room, and the mastery over the English language for someone that age, it's just amazing. Anonymous patron says, I just listened to your coverage on Inside and I felt immediately defensive at Berto's comments.
There you go.
on talking about suicide.
Oh.
By the way, I have this weird love-hate thing towards Berto sometimes. Have you ever heard that, Berto?
Never in my life have I heard
Seriously?
That. Of course I have.
From who?
I'm a very divisive, polarizing.
What do they tell you?
Well, I didn't care for you at first, but now I don't.
People say that?
Yeah, like even the other day we were saying how one of our patrons was found me. What was it? Creepy at first.
Oh right.
Yeah. Look.
But even people in person.
In person. I mean, maybe not so much nowadays, but when I was younger, I remember. So in college, these neighbors upstairs, we went and met them, and this guy Adrian, later tells my friend, it's like, yeah, there's that guy, that Berto guy. There's something weird about him. I don't like him, and I come to find out it's because I was trying to be. He had asked me where I worked or something. And I was trying to be not brag. I was trying to not brag, right? And in the process of trying to not brag,
crazy. Yeah, that drives me nuts when people go to Harvard and they say like, "Oh, I go to is it New Haven or where?"
or something.
Yeah, I go to college in wherever the fuck the town is. I'm just like, no one cares that you go to Harvard.
So in the process of trying to not brag, I came off as the biggest, douche. You know what?
Yeah,
and so. I don't like that term because it's such a misogynistic term,
Douche?
Yeah.
Why?
Because it's something perceived as dirty for women, and so that makes
interesting. Now I'm being taught by Bert.
I'm mansplaining.
Oh, how the tables have turned.
But anyways, the point is, that happened. Another time I remember, even when I was younger, I've told this one before. I was walking up the stairs at Liti's house, and I was staying there for a few days, and I overheard her maid talking to her in her room, and it was like, he's just insufferable, and he's so demanding, and I'm always having to do this and that. And then I started putting together that she was talking about me, and I was like, ooh. So I walked back down the stairs, and I was like, oh no, what was I saying and doing? And then there were other times in my life where that happened, where I found out later someone had found. Now, usually, not always, usually people come around.
Yeah.
So there are people that instantly love me. There are people that instantly hate me. And a lot of times the people that instantly hate me, if they get to know me better, they come around.
Yeah.
But sometimes they don't want to get to know me better.
Yeah, I'll say I had a small version of that when I first encountered you. You were singing karaoke. We met singing karaoke, and you were singing this very elaborate Elton John song.
Don't let the sun go down.
And I found it to be narcissistic because everyone else, including me, really were hunched over in a corner, and you were working the room. You were walking up and down.
Walking it up.
And you were standing tall, and you were like, I am a singer, and you are going to listen to me sing. And I remember...
For a long time.
Yeah, and it was a long song, and I remember thinking, I didn't hate you, but I just thought, wow, that guy has a lot of confidence. And then, but soon after that, we met. We became, really good friends. But yeah, so Anonymous Patron said, I just listened to your episode on Inside, and I became defensive at Berto's comments about suicide. I have this weird love-hate thing towards Berto sometimes. I understand his position on suicide feeling too grave of a topic for comedy, but when are we allowed to talk about it? It's hard because it is real that hearing about suicide triggers that thought cycle. So she's saying that yes, talking about suicide can be triggering, but the alternative is just stuffing it and having this incredibly lonely, shameful experience. Berto, what do you think?
That's fair. I mean, I've never experienced it, so that's fair. It's just that the thing I was reacting. Look, I even said in the episode that just as I was thinking that I was really uncomfortable with him joking about shooting himself like that, because again, I literally lost an uncle that way. Just as I was feeling that way, he then turned it around a little bit and started talking about it, and then made a different jokey song. I was okay with that jokey song about suicide because he was kind of both kind of making a point and also still not taking it too serious. The thing I was having up until that point is that several times during the episode, he had made references to wanting to kill himself in such a passing and almost glorified way that's what was bugging me. Because what I don't like is the glorification of the idea. Because I actually suffered at the hands of that event. An event that took someone from my family through a gunshot that they self-inflicted, and there's nothing fun or glorious about it to me.
First off, I want to say that, Berto, you're completely free to have your take and opinion, and there wasn't anything about your take or opinion on the special that I found to be problematic in any way. It was just, it's comedy.
Opinions.
It's an art. If we could ever call comedy art, Bo Burnham's special Inside is comedy art. Yeah. And art is extremely subjective. Yeah. And so, Berto, you watch that scene where he's talking about suicide, and you're, at least at times, thinking, I don't know if I like this tone.
When he's literally saying, like, I forget what he says, but I'm going to grab a gun, put it to my head, and shoot myself. Like, when he's saying that, and that moment is supposed to sort of be levity, I am sitting there going, okay.
But it's a very...
not enjoying this.
Yeah, I want to... I encourage everyone to watch this scene because it's very tonally complex. Yeah. And what I will say is levity is a word for it, but it's so much different than that. To me, it's all in what I feel is being communicated to me. And what I felt was being communicated to me from Bo Burnham himself was that he legitimately thinks about suicide sometimes. And
fair enough.
And that he acknowledges that happens to people sometimes. And these are thoughts that go through his mind. I could see him as he's thinking about suicide or about suffering or about trying to escape his suffering, he has this dialogue in his head around like, well, don't do that. And he makes that sort of dialogue into this outward relationship between himself and the viewers.
Yeah. But by that point, that diffused what I was feeling.
Yeah.
I said this in the review. I said like that I was feeling that way, and then he sort of turned it into a half serious, half joking point, and that was okay.
But even if it's not okay with you, Berto, I would completely understand. When I was watching, and I said this when we talked about it before, I was thinking, I understand if one, people are like milquetoast on this, or if they hated it. Because this thing is so unique in its tone that unless you're on board with Bo Burnham and his vibe in this whole thing is unwatchable in certain ways. And so I get that. You weren't even saying that. So I'm just saying you're entitled to your opinion. Everyone is entitled to the vibe that they get from art, particularly around a topic like suicide, and that's okay. We can all have different takes on things.
And to the question of like, is it never okay to... Well, okay, so maybe some things aren't. Now, I'm not saying suicide is one of them. I'm not sure. I'll tell you what. If we had a comedian, like if in his special or some other special, someone is going like, joking about rape, it'd be a hard thing to defend. Like, well, when can we joke about rape, right? Like at some point we'd be like, I don't know if we can.
Well, you understand it's a different topic.
Well, but hold on, I'm drawing lines, right? I'm saying like there must be, because one position one could take would be that no, every topic is okay to be made fun of at some point. Like you could take that stance, right?
I wouldn't take that
Well,
stance.
I know, but some people do and can, right?
Which is silly. And the best book to listen to understand why not is Shrill by Lindy West, a local hero of mine. She has a whole series of chapters on how she went up against all the comedians around making jokes about rape, and it's extremely well articulated.
But on the day that 9/11 happened, I forget, was it George
Gilgrape, I want to say.
Gilgrape?
What's his name?
Someone was joking about 9/11 on...
Yeah, it's the guy.
Okay. So
Gilbert Godfrey.
Okay. So sure. Look, I would agree. I would agree that there are topics that are not okay for comedy. Some people don't take that stance. Some people say, no, everything should be okay for comedy. Okay?
No. Everything is quote unquote okay for comedy. Some jokes are just extremely distasteful to me.
I actually don't agree that everything should be okay for comedy. For example, I don't think.
What do you mean? What would it mean for a joke to not be okay? It's against the law?
No, that we should all not be into that, basically. Like, for example, a comedian joking about being a pedophile or something. You know, like I'm not gonna laugh. I hope no one does.
Right. So if something's, and this is Lindy West's whole thing, is like, what she's not saying censorship. What she's saying is understand the impact of this joke, one, and two, understand maybe why you're saying the joke, because if you're saying the joke for reasons that you could all probably agree are bad reasons, then you probably shouldn't be making that joke.
So therefore, if we had been talking about some comedian special, and in that comedy special, they had joked about actually murdering someone, or which actually might be in comedian specials, or rape or something really bad. You
literally just told about Chris Rock talking about killing.
Well, he didn't, but it was,
But that's...
But if I said, that was making me really uncomfortable, I think it would be a hard position to take to say, well, you shouldn't feel uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I think suicide isn't victim free. The whole circle around the person that completes suicide.
Yeah. What's your point?
What's your point? I think it's perfectly viable to feel that suicide might be one of those categories where humor doesn't play well.
Okay.
But
it did
rape,
play well with me.
Like pedophiles.
We're not talking about pedophile. We're talking about suicide.
I think people
jokes.
think that suicide only affects them, but it actually does affect their community.
Do you think I think that?
No, but I'm saying...
Then why do I think it's funny?
Do you think that suicide is funny?
I thought his jokes about suicide were funny.
I don't know, because you found them funny.
Yeah.
But for me to take the position that I was uncomfortable, because in my mind, suicide isn't that funny. I think shouldn't be that surprising, because to me, suicide is one of those categories.
It's not surprising. Not surprising
well,
at all.
to some people it is.
Okay, but not to me.
That's why we're talking about it.
The whole time I was watching this special.
I'm not having this conversation with you. You never said that to me.
No.
I'm saying the people that are surprised that I would take that,
but I think your counter argument swings the opposite wrong, in a equally wrong direction.
How is that?
To say, you're essentially saying that as a society, we should not have jokes about suicide.
No, I'm saying that it is perfectly reasonable if someone says, I don't find some of these sensitive topics that funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so when someone asks,
but that's not what you I just want to be clear. It's not what you said earlier. What you said was, I think this is exactly what you said. It's okay. It's okay for us to say it's not okay to make jokes about suicide as a society, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Which I don't agree with.
Well, that's fine, but I think someone could propose that about rape, for example. So then you're arguing about the topics.
Well, to be specific about rape jokes is that, and Lindy West says this too, it's not rape jokes that are bad. It's the kind of rape jokes that were prevalent up until 10 years ago as a result of her actual advocacy and activism.
Yeah.
Was they were essentially just straight up jokes about how the comedian would be like, yeah, and then I raped her, and then everyone would laugh.
Yeah.
It'd be that kind of joke.
So,
but you can make a joke about the topic of rape and have it not be misogynistic and have it not be not propagate ideas that are harmful to women.
Okay.
You can have jokes about a topic about suicide and have it not diminish the experience of those who are affected by suicide.
Right. So to me, these did fall in the category where they do diminish, because when you start trying to make a joke saying, like, to me it feels like that, where it's like, I could literally grab a gun, put it in my mouth, and pull the trigger in, like that kind of stuff, to me, is headed in that direction. It's like, well, that's literally what people do, and it's horrible, and it ruins a whole community.
Yeah, I mean, you didn't think it was funny. I the whole time thought, and I've said this before, that he was empathizing. It felt empathetic towards people who suffer from suicide. That's the way it felt to me. It felt 100% from beginning to end.
Yeah.
Because of anyone who would detect it, it would be me. Like, I study this stuff, I treat this stuff, I think about it a lot. I'm not saying that someone couldn't hear that joke and feel demeaned or feel othered or feel as if their experience wasn't taken seriously. I could see that, but I'm not saying it's inherent in the joke, because I, as someone who's very sensitive to suicide, only took it, and a lot of the elements of that whole show, as the foundation was empathetic, on top of that was tongue-in-cheek, not the other way around.
Okay, so I think you can have an opinion about it, and your opinion is that it was fine, and you laughed. I have a different opinion.
100%.
But I don't think your opinion is any more valid.
100%.
Yeah.
I've been saying that from the beginning. But I will argue for you against the listeners and say that you're entitled to feel it wasn't funny, and that there were elements of that, of various jokes in that special, and maybe even that one, that felt disrespectful. I will completely stand by that, because if it felt that way to you, it felt that way to you, and it's art. He wasn't giving a lecture on, like, let me tell you about the problems of suicide, and then you stand up and be like, I disagree. It wasn't that sort of thing. He's playing with culture and with ideas that are on the edge of our comfort level. And suicide is one of those things. And again, I just felt like he was being empathetic. And that would be my hope, is that when people watch it, they don't walk away going like, ha, suicide's funny, or isn't it funny to joke about killing yourself? I felt it was more like...
It's possible that people who have experienced someone in their life being taken away by suicide would feel not so fun during those moments.
Totally. Yeah. So, and similar to what we were talking about before, in terms of when he would make these jokes about Jeff Bezos or the environment, and then he'd be riffing about, like, maybe we shouldn't put all of our power in corporations that are incentivized to pollute the earth and exploit us. I'm just saying, like, maybe we shouldn't do that. Long pause. I'm horny. Like, I get for you that feels like a setup of a serious thing and then just completely tearing it down with a, silly adolescent joke. But for me, when I hear it and I watch that and I think, oh my God, that is how I feel. And sometimes you just want to make a joke about being horny.
Yeah.
And all those things still exist. You know what I mean? Which I totally get. And everyone is entitled to that, absolutely.
Well, it's like I said before, I love Jon Stewart. I love The Daily Show. I actually find that classic form of humor where you kind of are going somewhere and then you deflate. That's great. That's very classic. My lamentation was that I just wish that was the exception to the rule. Like, and we can also make fun of it. Because we are taking it so seriously. We might as well make fun of it a little bit.
Right. Yeah, I get that. And at the same time, I'm not particularly interested in censorship. I'm interested in conversations about things that help. Like, for example, just even the jokes about rape.
Yeah.
As someone who hasn't experienced rape, I would hear jokes about rape, and I don't remember how I would have reacted to it in the past. It's hard for me to remember, but I don't remember being like upset about it. But to hear Lindy West and other people break down the jokes, I say, oh, yeah, I see that. And now when I hear a joke about rape, I don't like it at all. Like I cringe as and it's rare now because I think of Lindy West's work. I'll hear the beginning of it. I'll be like, oh, uh-oh. So how did that happen? Well, it happened because I listened to people. I heard what they had to say. I didn't change just because I changed. I changed because I learned other people's experience. And so I think when we have conversations like this about how it affects people, I think then we as a society learn. Censoring, I don't think, is the idea, or saying right or wrong or political correctness.
Right.
I think it's about hearing people's experience. Like, for example, when some people walk away from a PC conversation about asking someone, where they're from, like, where are you from? And they'll say, like, what? It's like not politically correct to ask someone where they're from. I'm just not supposed to ask that question anymore because everyone's a snowflake. And so I try to really explain, like, this is why it hurts me when people ask me throughout my life, because I don't look white, where I'm from. It makes me feel like a foreigner, but I've ranted about this many times. And I'm not saying you're not supposed to do it. I'm saying if you understand my experience, you won't do it.
Yeah.
If you just understood what happens inside of me, I trust you won't do it. And so I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying listen to me, and I'm sure you will change your behavior.
Which is why I'm saying what I say, which is like, hey, you're free to say your jokes. Just the reason it's an 8 and not a 10 is for a few reasons. One of them is I don't find suicide so funny. Here's why, Yeah. But of course, censorship is a complete straw man argument. We shouldn't be censoring anything.
So right now, the love-hate meter of the listeners, where do you think you're at?
Well, if I am to guess, knowing how the internet is like, did you just compare Bo to someone joking about rape? So it's probably in like 10 out of 10 hate.
No, I think you underestimate the love.
No, I know. I know. That's why it's a spectrum. So
yeah, we get a lot of emails. People say they only listen to Berto episodes.
Yeah.
In fact,
to hate it.
Gave a patron survey a while back, and I'm still coding all the qualitative data, which takes me forever. And it feels like homework, so I avoid it. But a lot of people on the survey would say their favorite part of the podcast is you.
Nice. Touching.
Well, that does it for that episode of Psychology in Seattle. Go to our website, click on the contact page, and tell us where you are on the love or hate Berto, but particularly if you love Berto, because we would love to forward those emails to him. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because
you deserve it.